Hey sixth graders, so I'm sorry I'm not in the building today, but I definitely did want to still go over the quiz review with you so that you got that review before you took your quiz today, okay? So for this first slide right here, it just wants us to compare integers. On this one, I have two negative integers, so consider it owing $10 and owing $9, and we're trying to ask ourselves, what is the better situation? And I know that owing $9 is better than owing $10. It's also closer to zero. So negative 9 is closer to zero, closer to getting out of debt. Okay? When we're comparing negative 7.8 and negative 7.3, I'm going to go ahead and add zeros so I can read them as money. And so on one side I have owing $7.80, and on the other side I have owing $7.30. And so I'm going to ask myself, well, which one is a better situation? And owing $7.30 is a better situation to be in. It's less money owed, right? Closer to zero, closer to getting out of debt. Now, it's not less, it's not a better situation by much, but it is better, okay? All right, going ahead and putting rational numbers in order, okay? Now, the reason this says rational numbers is because it has an integer in it, like 3, but it also has these fractions and decimals, which would make it rational numbers. One thing I am going to do is go ahead and make my fractions into a decimal. And remember, you can do that by just dividing it out in your calculator. So you can put 1 divided by 4 in your calculator, and it'll give you what it is as a decimal. You don't even have to put the negative in your calculator. You just have to remember that it's negative. So if you go ahead and do that in your calculator, you're going to get 0.25 or negative 0.25. And then if you do 3 divided by 4, you're going to get 0.75. And I know that's negative, okay? Now, it does say order these numbers from least to greatest. Remember, that's really important to make sure you're putting them in the order that it's actually asking for you to put it in. Because if you make a mistake and choose greatest to least, then you'll get the problem wrong. So I'm going to remind myself that it wants least to greatest, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers. So 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers. So the least number in my list, or the most amount of money owed, would be $1.50, owing $1.50. And from there, we're just going to get slightly better, okay? So what's a little bit better than owing $1.50? Well, owing 75 cents, but I'm actually going to put negative 3/4 because that's the number they gave me. All right, which one is just a little bit better than that? Well, owing 25 cents, or negative 1/4. And the greatest number in this list would be 3. And so there we have them from least to greatest. All right, looking at this one, it says distance on a coordinate grid. Carlos rode his bike from his house located at coordinate point negative 4,5 to the park for baseball practice located at 7,5. If each unit on the coordinate plane represents 1 mile, how many miles did he ride his bike to the park? So we're trying to figure out, well, what's the distance between the, the park and, what's the distance between his house and the park? So I'm going to go ahead and write these two ordered pairs down. So we got negative 4,5 and then 7,5. And I'm going to see if they're in the same neighborhood or different neighborhoods. So let's see, negative, positive, positive, positive. These are in different neighborhoods. And remember, same neighborhoods subtract, but these are in different neighborhoods, so we're going to go ahead and add. Now, I'm going to cross out that number that they have in common, because that's just telling me they're on the same line, okay? I know that this one is 4 to the left, this one is 7 to the right, so how far are they from each other? It looks like 11, and then miles, because they said each unit is a mile. 11 miles. That means he rode his bike a very long distance, okay? But really quickly, remember, same, we're going to subtract, and then different, we're going to add. Okay? That's just something to keep in mind. Alright, so let's practice a little bit more with distance. So it says a trapezoid has points A, B, C, and D. Find the length of AB and the length of CD. Well, the length of AB is just going to be the distance from A to B. So it's just asking you to find the distance between point A and the distance between point B. Because if they are 6 apart from each other, then that line would be 6, right? So I'm going to go ahead and write down the points for A and the points for B. And let me see. So we got negative, positive, negative, positive. Looks like they're in the same quadrant because they're both negative, positive. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract. Let me cross out what they have in common. And since this is subtraction, I need to actually put that negative 6 first. Alright, so when we do this, we're just going to end up with 6 minus 3, which is 3. So the distance between A and B is 3. So that just means the length of AB is 3. Okay, let's go ahead and find the length of CD. So let me go ahead and write these. So we got negative 8, 2, and negative 1, 2. Alright, so we got negative, positive, negative, positive. These are in the same neighborhood. They're actually all in the same neighborhood. So I'm going to subtract again. Go ahead and set my absolute value bars, crossing out what they have in common. And I just want to use that negative 8 and negative 1. So this is just going to be 8 minus 1, which is 7. So C and D are 7 units away from each other, or the length of that is 7 units. So keep in mind, if they're just asking you to find the length of something, they just want you to find the distance between them. So the length of AB is the distance between A and B. The length of CD, distance between C and D. Okay. Alright, go ahead and flip it over. Okay, so reflections on a coordinate plane. It says a point is reflected across the x-axis. The original point is at negative 2, 4, and what is going to be that new point once you reflect it? Well, if I'm reflecting it across the x-axis, I know my x is going to stay the same. So I'm going to go ahead and fill in that 2 because it stays the same. And my y is going to be the opposite. So the opposite of 4 is negative 4. Then I'm just going to double check. Oh, I didn't put that negative sign with my 2. So the x stays the same, negative 2, negative 2. Then I have the opposite of 4, which is negative 4. It's good that I went back and checked because I had made a mistake. Alright, a point is reflected across the y-axis, and the new point is negative 2, 4. What was the original point? This one's kind of interesting because it's saying we reflected it across the y-axis and we ended with this point. So they're saying, well, what did we start with? Now, one thing we know that they have in common, since it was reflected across the y-axis, we know they're going to have the same y. So the original point was at 4, and the reflected point is also going to be at 4 on the y. But I know that x needs to be the opposite. So if the reflected point was at negative 2, that means the original point needed to be at positive 2. So this is our original that we started with. And then when we reflected it across the y, our y stayed the same, and our x's are opposite. Alright, what quadrant is this ordered in? Now, there are, I think, a couple questions on your quiz that just ask for the quadrant, and I do not want you to miss them. I also want you to keep in mind that quadrant 2 and 4 are the most commonly mixed up quadrants. Okay, they're not typically going to ask you about 1 or 3, because those are very straightforward and easy. But since 2 and 4 both have positive and negative in it, it can get really confusing. So I always suggest you draw yourself a little mini coordinate plane. And you don't have to actually graph it, but just ask yourself, how would I graph this? So if I started at the origin, I would have to move to the left because it says negative 4, and from there I'd go up because of the positive 3. So that's just a quick reminder to say, oh, I'm in quadrant 2. So this one is in quadrant 2, because remember they are 1, 2, 3, 4. Alright, looking at this one, we're going to do the same thing. So I'm going to draw myself a little mini coordinate plane, just to make sure I get it correct. I'm going to put my pin at the origin, and I'm going to say, how would I graph this? I would go 5 to the right, so just move to the right. It doesn't have to be exactly 5. And then down 4, which will put the point here in quadrant 4. Alright, so try your best on your test. Good luck. I will see you guys on Friday. I know that you all will do well. Make sure you're using, you can borrow a basic calculator from me, or you can use your own calculator. Also remember that this has to be taken in the secure tester, so don't actually log into your computer. Go through that app, Edulastic Kiosk, to take this quiz, and I will see you guys tomorrow.